All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So we're going into chapter 6 here. Let's see. Actually, we ended just where Carissa screamed.
Uh-huh.
Is that where it ended? Okay. The crazed gunman, disarmed and out cold, is in a holding cell while Officer Nicky Randall stands and watches him sleep. Cells in the standard steel bar variety.
No, you read that. No. Nope. You read a whole nother section.
Okay, so I am
After
into
that.
chapter 6. All right. The humans are so simple. They've had centuries to move out into space. Scientifically master subjects like dark energy and dark matter, investigate the universe and make it work for them. Instead, they've warred with themselves, almost destroyed their species in the process, and run out of livable space on their planet. They've showed no foresight, no ability to deal with adversity. Their species is truly a parasite, and this has been obvious from the very beginning. Humans have opted to try shortcuts instead of doing their research first and proven time and time again that they do not have the patience to do the work that is necessary to advance their station in the universe. In most cases, first contact is done through straightforward contact. But the things seen through their television and radio broadcasts convinced his people early on this was not a species that would likely take kindly to strangers. Since they're a species consisting of depraved, insane, and immoral people, the belief is that any alien species will become an invader and should be viewed as such right from the beginning. Even the other humanoid worlds have resisted contact with Earth to this point. It wasn't difficult to convince Sabal to take on such a huge project as destroying the human race on Earth. Indeed, he sees it as a noble cause, and he takes great pride in his ability to wipe out entire ecologies quickly. These people are greedy, paranoid, and selfish. It is easy to get them to turn against one another and even to turn against themselves. This would be their final battle, and it would be with themselves. Sabal sees this as very fitting and takes pride in his role in the role he's taking here. Genetic code can take many roads as evolution seems to have a mind of its own. Humanoid beings are remarkably common within the Milky Way. There are subtle differences, but evolutionary processes seem to reward that DNA which develops along a certain path. Though there were races born in and living in methane or nitrogen rich environments, those which lived off of oxygen and carbon dioxide were the most common and usually evolved the furthest. Altel was a world made up of animals that would be considered monsters on Earth. Those monsters have been tamed by Sabal and his people, though they would be considered monsters in their appearance as well. They had learned to live in harmony with the environment, and they had been strict about population control as well as finding better energy sources than those which robbed their world of its precious minerals or fouled the atmosphere. The parasitic humans exhausted their fossil fuels entirely. They destroyed many miles of soil for any sign of fossil fuels they could find. Towards the end of that era, the violence and economic upheaval was tremendous. It all played out over television waves which carried all the way back to Altel through relays that Altel had set up. The parasites had only turned to water and solar power when they had no other choice, and even then they tried converting their own food into fuel. A world filled with starving children, and they turned food that would have saved lives into gasoline, which would power cars for a few more months. The parasites had to be stopped, and it was up to his people to ensure this happened. Sabal took pride in his world's sheer dominance over the galaxy. He intended to use Earth as a jumping off point towards the final solution to the population issues within the galaxy and an end to any chance that anyone could stand in their way. There were ways to travel around an arcology without being noticed. During construction of these beasts, service tunnels were used to carry the materials between levels. Once the levels were filled, the service tunnels were blocked off with metal panels along the walls in each room. The tunnels extended through top to bottom and had pathways along every level, just large enough for Sabal and his people to crawl through. The real trick was the initial entrance into the beast. This was where he needed Sterling Bishop. Sterling had asked for access to the service tunnels prior to his moving in. The bribery and false promises had occurred even before that. Sterling had stated he wanted to see the service areas were secure from a structural point of view. In reality, he left the service entrance near the top of the arcology unsecured, and Sabal had flown right in with his invader allies close behind. The service hatch was secured behind them afterward, and they were traveling around virtually invisible as they would not be found by any Earthling technology, as their biological makeup was different enough to escape their detection. They had become a parasite to the parasites, and the irony of this was not lost upon him. They had built a crude home for themselves attached to the service tunnel near the top of the station. built just under the agricultural levels of this arcology. Sabal rarely said much to his subordinates. Unlike humans, they weren't insecure, and silence was not considered a bad thing. To him, this was a sign they were efficient and had their goal in mind. They were united. He believed there was nothing that could stop them. Villain introduced. There you go. Okay, we're all done for tonight.
No.
Okay, all right.
And go.
Mike enters the morgue and he goes straight to Sterling's motionless body. He draws back the blanket, inspects the burn markings on his chest, shaking his head. He then looks over at John, Kristen, and Tanya. I need to be alone here, he says, shooing them away. To hell with that, I'm not leaving, John refuses, while Tanya and question. Tanya and Kristen don't question Mike in his request for privacy. As they leave, the door closes. John sighs. What the hell would you need to hide from me? Mike looks down at the floor. Look, this is much bigger than you know. I understand you're special ops, and I know we're technically part of the same group, but we're not on the same level as you think we are. I wish I could reveal everything to you that I know, but I've sworn to secrecy. Please, John, trust me here. John stands his ground. I'm not going to be left out in the cold. Then go call Dave, Mike suggests. Screw you. You go call Dave, and I can do whatever investigation you're doing here. You can't do the investigation I'm doing here, John, so screw you. I can't explain it any simpler than that. Besides, you need to let Dave know we found each other. I'm sure this is the last thing he wanted, but it happened, and his stupid ass is going to have to deal with it. John nods. He did tell me to mind my own business. Must have meant about me and you running into each other. Yeah, alright, fine, I'll talk to Dave. But you have to tell me the truth eventually. I don't want this place to follow 443. Agreed, Mike says, and he shakes hands with John. You're one of the good guys, trust me. I'll tell you everything when I'm able to. Now's not the time. I'll hold you to that, you know. John reluctantly leaves. Mike waits about 10 seconds after the door closes. He's wary of anyone trying to eavesdrop. He also wants to be certain John isn't coming back in. He then goes to the door and enters a special security code to make sure no one else can get in, even John himself. He goes to the center of the room, pulls a device from under the back of his belt. He presses a button on the top of it, and a single beam of light is emitted from the device. It stops, and a black mass is seen in the middle of the room. Mike presses another button on the device, and a green bolt shoots from it, and Mike sees the black mass grow larger. He turns the device off, jumps into the black mass. The mass then collapses in upon itself. When Mike lands, he lands at the feet of his wife. He looks up and sighs. Damn it, he says. Katie's jaw drops. You haven't seen me in months, and that's the response I get when you see me? What are you doing here anyway? Yeah, I just don't have a lot of time, and I thought the device was set to send me to my office, not home. He does hug her, though. I am glad to see you, he says, stroking her long blonde hair as he looks her in the eyes. There's no way that group he left behind on the arcology would believe what he'd just done, moving many light years across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. Katie leads Mike by the hand out of their home, and the home world of the not quite Earthling Mike Translow comes into focus. It's a world of flying machines that travel without making noise as they zigzag in the sky overhead. Mike's home is in the middle of a rather small-looking residential area. His home's two stories tall with a landing pad on top. It's a blue sky he sees as he steps up onto the roof, which he hadn't seen in what seems like forever to him. He's been stuck on arcologies and among dead bodies for so long, he had started to doubt such a world existed. Katie and Mike take a seat on their personal craft, a simple two-seated flying machine barely big enough to encase the two of them. They could have got something bigger, but there's no need for it. The cockpit closes. Mike enters the coordinates into the computer. The ship takes off without a sound by its solar-powered motor. The solar power then feeds a small fusion reactor at the core of the ship, which means it's self-sustaining once it's been activated. Fusion power gives it almost limitless energy, which is only allowed to drain away for safety reasons when the ship's been turned off. They're highly efficient. It's been difficult for Mike to deal with Earth's ships in place of what he's used to. How bad is it there, his wife asks. Mike sighs. Arcology 443 is dead. Arcology 1237 is becoming diseased. But there is no virus that I can find. I'm at a dead end and with this one, and there are 500,000 lives riding on this, he explains. I really want a simple answer, but there isn't one. You would not have come back here without any kind of answer, though. Oh, I have an answer to who's behind this. Alltel's the answer. I just can't figure out why, or the exact details of what they're doing. Katie winces. You were right then, since they were your prime suspects from the beginning. Now, Mike, you need to point that out to people here. You were the sole dissenting voice when that agreement was set in place, and you need these people to be at your side now. Remember, there's a lot of people that don't feel bad for what's happening to them and feel they deserve it. Earth's bad decisions are well known on our world, the same as they are in Alltel. Yeah, but we're not trying to exterminate them for it, Mike says as the ship pilots itself to a landing outside of a building which houses Mike's office as well as many other important soldiers and politicians. The building is a large circular one in its design, composed entirely on the outside of tinted bulletproof glass. Mike doesn't understand the need for that since bullets haven't been used in centuries, and lasers will melt that glass if someone decides they don't like the look of the building. Regardless, he rushes into the building without saying another word to his wife. See you later then, she says with a scowl as he runs off. She would be mad, but she knows how important this mission is to him, and she doesn't want him to fail, since she believes Earth can be a lot more if given the chance too. Mike sprints through the door, bowls over a young intern who'd been carrying documents he spent the whole morning printing off. Paper scattered all over the floor. Sorry, Mike says, wondering why the intern's even using paper when everything's digital these days. He runs down the hall and reaches his office, throwing open the door and seeing his desk just as he left it. He heads to his desk, sits down at his computer, one much more impressive than the handheld he was forced to use on assignment. He uses the touchscreen to bring up his boss in 3D, the man clearly surprised to see Mike. Translo, you're back. General Rightly, I don't know way to build to this. It's Altel, sir, he says with a salute. And salute as if that might soften the I told you so nature of his visit. How do you know? Rightly asks with a sneer. He's pessimistic, as Mike expected he would be. General Cale Rightly was in his late 70s and should have retired years ago, but he was as stubborn as he was old. He had seen this world through decades of peace, through a deal he made with potential enemies, and he'd seen as a man least likely to change or to fire a shot when the situation demanded it. It's definitely not a simulation. He and Mike had been through many arguments over the years due to not seeing eye to eye on matters such as this. I believe they're altering DNA of humans on these stations and enhancing their aggressive brain centers or something. I've scanned for any viral infection and found nothing to this point. People who are gentle and kind, they become raving lunatics. This was my first clue, but the big indicator to me is this. Mike transmits a series of photos to his boss. Cale Rightly quickly looks through the images and lowers his head. These people were killed with thermal weapons. He pauses before he continues. Altil is the only world that embraced these barbaric weapons. The thing is, Mike, you need to actually show me an Altilian firing one of these weapons. I can't take this information further than this stage until we see that. Mike stifles the urge to scream. He has to appear completely calm right now. You said yourself, sir, no one else even accepted these weapons. These are the weapons Altil embraced when we all refused to use them. People are dying. We need to take action. I need men to take back with me. I need backup. The arcology has a police force, does it not? Mike sighs loudly. His calm demeanor is breaking down already. They have 9 police officers and 2 special ops members, including me. That's a handful of people with guns, not all of whom are good at using them, among a group of nearly 500,000 ticking time bombs. I don't know where the Altilian forces are. I can't explain the truth to them, so how do I get them to stand behind me? Rightly shrugs. I'm honestly not too concerned. Earth's people have scared a lot of others with their history to this point. They don't exist in harmony with nature or even with each other. They're seen in many circles as beings which can't be saved. I can't find any flaw in this logic other than the idea we always give a race of beings another chance. Maybe humanity has used those chances up. We haven't even made contact with them in a public manner due to how they'd likely react. They're very violent and irrational, Mike. So I'm on my own then, Mike asks flatly. I'm afraid so, Colonel Translow. I'm not a fan of the idea you'll be working alone, but I can't see. Mike shuts down his computer, gives his boss the finger, pulls the device from his pocket, and readies to jump back to the arcology. I get it. If he's on his own, maybe he needs to play by his own rules. Playing nice and doing what he was told, it clearly isn't working. So, is that enough?
No.
No.
Nope. Keep going.
As she makes her way home, Katie's mind wanders. So he just ran off on her. It's like, all right, see ya. Didn't love you, nothing. Hasn't seen her in a while. She knew what she was getting herself into when she married Mike. She'd known from the day they met what he was about. She'd been 16 at her junior prom without a date. She'd been invited to go by Harrison Carter, a boy she'd had a crush on for years. There had been rumors about what he might have up his sleeve, but Katie believed in Harrison. Besides, he'd never done anything to her which would lead her to believe the rumors that things were not as they appeared to be. The night started well enough as Harrison was on time, arrived with flowers, took her to the prom as expected. What wasn't expected was Harrison embarrassing her by revealing love letters she wrote to him in front of the whole school. He then revealed that he just got back together with his old girlfriend and the humiliation was complete. The school would later find out what had happened and issue a suspension to Harrison, which Katie felt was a little overboard, but they were serious in their anti-bullying stance. Katie just wanted it all to go away. She stormed out of there crying. She knew she wasn't popular, but she had to be better than this. A night that was supposed to be special for her had become a horrible night, and she was not sure she would ever stop crying. The rumors had been right. She was a fool. She stood on a bridge behind the school and that was over a pond. There was a flower floating in the water. She saw through her teary eyes. A hand tapped her on the shoulder, and she turns to find a young man holding a single flower. "You're better than he is," the stranger said, handing her the flower. She had looked down and accepted it as a tear hit the ground. "I can never show my face in that school again. I might as well just transfer. Harrison ruined me." Mike took her chin in his hand and gently raised it so their eyes met. "Katie Wedler, I'm going to take you back into that prom. If he so much as looks in your direction, I'll turn him inside out. I give you my word, you'll never feel this way again." She found herself laughing at that promise. Big promise from a man I don't know. He nodded. "I'm capable of delivering. You won't find a man in that school who's half the man I am. Name's Mike Translow, and I'm going to be a better man than Harrison anyway. I have some information on him, see? Come here and we'll chat about it." "You're who?" "You'll figure out who I am soon enough." Katie locked arms with Mike and became aware she was grinning broadly. She clutched his arm tightly and kissed his cheek. "You're sweet. Glad to meet you, Mike." On their way back to the prom, they were headed off by Harrison. "I thought you'd be gone for the night," he said with a laugh. Mike stood nose to nose with Harrison. "You know, every now and then you come across a person who's capable of bringing you to your knees. You get so full of yourself you lose sight of just how mortal you are. Harrison Carter, you owe this woman an apology." Harrison was joined by 3 of his large male friends. They all glared at Mike. "I don't think so, kid. I don't know who the hell you think you are, but that's not going to happen." Mike had calmly shrugged and led Katie through the mass of teenagers dancing to bad music, leading her to the stage. She refused to go up, but Mike had given a look that told her everything would be all right if she trusted him. She then reluctantly followed, and Mike, taking the microphone on the stage, meant for the principal to conduct the party as well as for Harrison to make a fool out of Katie. Mike had spoken with confidence that he would become famous for. He had commanded the room, a foreshadowing of the man he would be soon enough. "Harrison Carter sent this young woman out of the building crying mere minutes ago. Many of you here laughed at her. Now, here's what I need for you people to know," he said as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a handheld computer and projected an image of Harrison Carter kissing someone. "I know we live in a permissive society, but this image clearly shows Harrison kissing another man." The teens start laughing. Now, maybe this is the kind of close friendship men are supposed to have, and maybe this is why you decide to make Katie look bad. You prefer your women with a little something extra down there. You can admit it, Harrison. We're here for you. Harrison storms the stage. Mike drops the microphone as well as the computer, and he's prepared for a physical confrontation. Harrison jumps right onto the stage, takes a roundhouse kick to the face from Mike, who lays him out with a right hand hook to the jaw. Mike then looks at Harrison's friends and motions for them to join in the fight. Instead, they opt to take off in the other direction while the teens laugh. Mike then turns to Katie and offers his hand to her. She takes it and smiles at him. There's something there in that moment, a spark that neither needs to name. They both know it's there, and the pain from what Harrison did is already faded. As she thinks back now, she finds herself emotional about that night, as Mike had been her knight in shining armor. Once the dancing was done, Katie has become the popular girl in the school. Mike was the alpha male of the school, and every girl handed him their number at the end of the night. He tore them up right in front of Katie and never dated another woman again. If anyone else had told her this tale, she wouldn't have believed it. A young man she had been completely oblivious to had scooped her up in her darkest hour and saved her from public humiliation. Harrison lost any popularity he'd had. No one was scared of him after that, the way that Mike had dropped him and such. Katie hadn't heard anything about Harrison since they graduated from high school either. From that day until now, she'd never doubted him. When he appeared minutes ago in their living room and was upset when he had seen her, that had hurt her feelings, but he had been the most dedicated man that she knew, and she had no doubt about his feeling towards her. She never doubted his explanation, and it made her wonder what kind of a man General Rightly was to look this noble man in the eyes and not believe every word he says. When Mike had come and revealed the discovery of a sister planet to their own, she'd been excited. That excitement was somewhat muted when she found out the issues Earth had in relation to their own world, and that seemed to be stuck in a rut in terms of technology. That only moved to make advances They only moved to make advances when they had to and not because they wanted to. Their world had always moved forward and never had the issues Earth had. There were religious folk on their world who saw Earth as the home to all that was evil and a sign of the end of the world coming. It was not the kind of talk which was limited, which limited the help they were willing to provide the planet's sister world or not. The fact this world used the same language as they did scared most, but it fascinated Katie and made her wonder if they had a common ancestor in the stars. There was so much to be learned by talking to these people, if only she could do that. Katie was a woman who didn't have much in the way of family or friends. Some of that had to do with the support of Mike's leanings towards helping Earth. Now, knowing what she knew about the situation Earth was in, she was more certain than ever Mike had made the right decision. She would always trust his instincts. As she arrived home, she watched the twin suns setting. It was always an amazing sight to her, the sun setting and the stars coming out at night. She spent many nights now watching the stars just to feel close to Mike, knowing he was near one of the pins of light she could see in the sky. She was pretty sure she was looking at the right star, and every night she hoped he was looking back.
Oh.
There you go. So I shoehorned his wife in there. And initially, the first time I wrote it, I had it that she was gone. So when I originally wrote it, she had been kidnapped, but he had thought she was dead, and I actually didn't write her in until much later. And it changed the character. And what's nice is when you get into the third book, I brought that story kind of back for the third book. I went, hey, what if that actually did happen, but not in this universe? And so that's where things happen. Because the third book is called Parallels, and that's where you get into every science fiction nightmare, which is parallel universes. Because if you don't write it well, it falls apart quickly. Parallel universes can be a pain. But there you go. What do you think?
Why do you ask my opinion? You already know that I like the book.
Because your opinion, it's important.
You already know that I like the book.
So, I would write it much differently now.
Of course.
Much differently. But, there you go. So, I'm into the Deadpool jersey today. So, with the Deadpool. And of course, it's geeky jerseys. They're all geeky jerseys. It's either hockey or it's geeky jerseys. So, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I don't have a problem with passing the time reading these books. And we're up to page number 54. And it's like 126 pages, I think, before you get to the end of the first book. 122. So, we're almost halfway through. And once we get into the fact that Mike's from another planet and you start meeting the aliens that are behind all of it, it starts to happen quickly. Yeah. It's sort of like when I was writing it the first time, I was like, okay, hold back. And now, just everything now. Just do it now. So, all right. Thank you guys for all your support. Do hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I will talk to you again soon.